Well, hi. A long time ago, I promised/threatened that I would show you my very first pole dancing video that I ever posted on YouTube, and I figured it's finally time to show you. Plus, I've been sick for like 2 weeks now, and I just don't feel up to doing a huge video, so here we are. Really, all you need to know before I show this to you is that it was filmed in 2019 when I was doing a project that I called My Circus Year. The intention of that was that every month of that year would be focused on learning a different circus skill or apparatus. It's a cool idea, right? It just didn't really come to fruition because all the people I chose to teach me were super busy, or it was going to be really expensive to take a bunch of lessons. So the video I'm about to show you was episode 4 of My Circus Year project, filmed in April 2019, which I cannot believe is 4 years ago now, almost. And let's just get into it. Welcome back to My Circus Year. Okay, sorry, that was literally less than half a second of showing you. I just wanted to note, at the time I didn't know how to use things like Canva to create backgrounds or anything, so this little My Circus Year icon, I photographed something relatively dark. That is why the back looks all grainy. It's not even a solid black. And then on top of it, in Instagram, when you go to make your stories, I put the words My Circus Year with 2 little circus tents, saved that as a vertical image, and that was like my branding for this whole project. So, not exactly high budget stuff. Okay, all right, let's play it. Today's episode, pole dancing, pole sport. Aerial silks are elegant. Juggling is cool. Balloon art is cute. What I haven't done yet, sexy. Yeah. Pole is legendary in the circus community for being very painful, and in the wider community for being quote-unquote a stripper thing. So the first thing to note here is that most of my footage is filmed vertically and then awkwardly tried to stretch out in iMovie. I didn't know anything about framing. I didn't have a tripod, I don't think. I really was not focusing on making the videos. I was more focusing on, oh, I'm doing this project. And the videos were so secondary, probably even tertiary. And that is why this project, part of why this project was not very successful. The fact is, the pole is just another apparatus, like silks or the trapeze, and the negative stigma is undeserved, except for the part about it being painful. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Eagle-eyed viewers might have also noticed that I had armpit hair at this time. This was during the era of my life where I had long, luxurious armpit hair. Kind of miss her, she was cute. Those who denigrated are largely just critical of female sexuality, but that could be another video entirely. For this month, I sought out 2 pole instructors whose abs could cut steel. I'm gonna bleep out those names that I just listed. One of the instructors was actually a stripper, which was cool. But I think I only met with her like once, and basically the arrangement I had was I was working for the studio as a social media manager, so that meant I could kind of come in and out whenever I wanted, pick up classes whenever I wanted. So I went into the classes that the stripper was teaching in April, which was basically the end of the semester, and she was just kind of like, what do I do with you? I've been teaching everyone else for the past 4 months, and here you are, what do you want? And then the other instructor, just was hardly ever there. I had 2 very reluctant instructors, and that was another big issue of this Circus Year project, was I would be showing up and asking these really busy people like, hey, you want to teach me something for free? I'm gonna make a YouTube video about it. For my first lesson she showed me a pole walk, a sassy little way to rest while prepping for the next move, as well as some basic spins, which I found hard to control. I often slammed into the pole or slapped my feet down instead of gracefully finishing the move. So another interesting thing about my pole journey, which I have often been told is the opposite of most people's pole journeys, is that I started on spin. This particular studio really only worked with spin, and then I went to another studio eventually, one that you might have seen on my Instagram, and that one also basically only does spin. So I never actually started on static like most of you, I would guess, probably did. So me being like, I found the spin kind of hard to control is because I went right into spin. And prior to doing pole, I was doing aerial silks. I was an aerial silks girly through and through. I really resented any time that I would switch over to pole because all I wanted to do was be up on the silks. She also showed me a basic climb or 2 and a layback, and that's when things really started to hurt. First official pole lesson, and man, that is tough. I tried to do a few inversions, which are something I can definitely do on the silks, and slipped every single time. No matter what I put on my hands, I could not get a good grip on the pole, so that was really frustrating. Yeah, pretty exhausted after lesson 1. I know I'm gonna have some bruises, and guess we'll see where we go from here. My first class immediately became a desensitization workshop. Yeah, the second instructor, her favorite thing was like, oh, does it hurt? Okay, we'll get on there and do a pole sit and then slide down 3 times. But one thing to note is I'm wearing bike shorts in basically all of these clips. That's what a lot of people wear to start out with, but I wish that I had been wearing like undies or something smaller, because I think 90% of my issue was that the pole was just catching the fabric of the bike shorts, and I'd be like, this is impossible to hold on. You really can't do half of pole without numbing your skin to the pain of shoving it against a hard-ass stick over and over, and you can't wear layers because you won't stick to the pole. So that move I was just yelling about was, it looks like a jasmine, and the entrance that the instructor had me use to get into it was nothing I've ever done since, so that's a little interesting. It is interesting people's different styles, how they'll teach you things, and it's not necessarily right or wrong, but just having taught myself for the past 2 years here at home, I can really tell you, like, here's the approach to get into this move that I'm comfortable with, and seeing these approaches, I'm like, really? That's how I learned? Okay. When my skin was in too much pain, we worked on a back spin, which I failed. Over and over. What you can't see here is me giving the middle finger to the pole, an inanimate object. Unlike the silks, which you manipulate around yourself to create shapes, the pole stays exactly where it is, and you have to manipulate your body around it. And it's going to hurt, and you kind of have to suck it up. I did not do a good job of up-sucking and instead started just goofing around. I do a little defeated shimmy. That was another thing we worked on a lot, was the cross knee release, or the layback, which is probably the first move that you learn where you tip back against the pole and dangle upside down. It is extremely painful. It is still painful to me, and I've been doing this for years now, but I just remember I was like, are you kidding me? Why does anyone do this? Again, I was a silks girly. I would happily take silk burn and the bruises from drops, but put me on a pole and try to get me to do a layback, and I'm like, what is this? Why would anyone do this to themselves?
Are you working on it so you're tired? Or are you tired? I'm tired. Okay.
Also, I attempted the pencil spin and immediately let go. At my next class, we learned the ballerina, which is a nice pretty move that hurts like heck and is all twisty to get into. My brain and my inner thighs hurt. And of course, the only time I did it off the ground, I was out of frame.
Yes! Yeah!
So we learned the ballerina, which I think gets taught a lot in beginner level classes, but is not really beginner friendly because it's pretty twisty. Those of you who have tried it will know that your shoulder just feels like it's gonna pop right out. I do not understand this entrance that I was using to get into the ballerina. It didn't start from a spin at all. I think I had to twist my torso around, reach down, grab. I was really relying on just like my ability to sort of twist my limbs out of their sockets to get into it, because I wanted to keep up with the people who had already been doing this in class. Anyway.
It's like slow and lamb, like, here's your chicken, your rotisserie chicken. Okay.
I attempted the pencil spin again to spare my poor thighs for a second. My goal was to hold it for 10 whole seconds. Here I hold it for 9. So close. I'll be honest, I don't think I can hold a pencil spin for longer than 5 seconds these days. It's weird how much your strength can change in just a few short years depending on your activity level. At the time, I was so active, so these feats of strength were like nothing to me. I'm really active still, but 4 years later, my body's just different, my strength is different. These pencil spins are not as easy as they used to be. My next lesson was a body dysmorphic disaster. Thus far in my pole month, I had done an okay job of swallowing my body image issues despite the near nudity,
But before this class, I ate and drank a bunch and felt like a bloated monster. I was also on my period, which lowers pain tolerance and adds more bloating. And I was still attempting and failing the painful layback.
I have not spoken much on this version of my channel about my body image stuff because honestly, at this point in my life, at this age, having lived all the life that I've lived, I don't feel this way anymore. I'm not like, ooh, I'm so bloated, I look so bloated, I look gross or whatever. I just don't really tend to have those thoughts. I practice a lot more body neutrality these days, but that really was not possible for me in this video. And of course, this is the way that it always works for folks. I'm much smaller in this footage than I am now, currently. And I'm like, oh man, I'm so bloated. I don't like my body. I could look back at any period of my life and be like, oh yeah, I was actually very strong and very fit and very healthy, and I remember hating myself at that time. So this was one of the only times in my life I've ever done pole after consuming alcohol. It was one of those days with my friends where we were day drinking and you're just sort of like vaguely buzzed, not quite drunk all day. So by the time I showed up to class, I had had just like drinks for hours and hours, and it just was not a good feeling. I do not ever touch the pole after drinking these days. I just feel like it's incredibly unsafe and I should not have been doing it.
Pole hurts.
Yep.
So I'm here in pole class, and I ate a bunch of food today, and I'm really full right now, and I'm really unmotivated and sore and just like not wanting to do it, and my body doesn't want to do it, and it hurts. Doing pole hurts. I don't want to hurt. I was being a whiny baby, so showed me another really painful move, naturally also out of frame.
So what we're doing right there is the hood ornament. Again, getting into it a way that I never ever get into it here at home.
We finished with some kick things that were supposed to be flirty and cute. Supposed to be.
I wiped the pole with a rag.
So this is 90% of pole. Just cleaning your stuff. I came back for one final attempt, open gym style.
I have thoughts. So I remember this open gym was really just a friend and I tooling around, and she was sort of teaching me moves. Additionally, this mat underneath me is driving me bananas. It is just like a folding play mat like you might put out for doing tumbles or something. It is not a pole mat. It's not circular. It's not going all the way around the pole. It's probably not even thick enough to be appropriate for a pole studio. And also, I think the move that I was just trying was a hello boys, and I remember thinking I was gonna snap my wrist off because I was just really doing it wrong.
Wanted to have at least a few cool moves to show off. I wanted to have a sexy mid-air split. I wanted to be able to grip the gosh darn pole with my gosh darn sweaty hands. But, as I have learned, we can't always get what we want.
With the other hand on your ass. Sexy. That works.
Next, I moved back to attempting inversions. It was so hard to wrap my head around going upside down with a pole instead of a silk.
Okay, these are nuts. Again, my friend taught me how to do this. Should you let your random friend who's been taking pole for like just a couple months longer than you teach you how to do an inversion? Absolutely not. You should have an instructor do that for you. But I was so cocky. I was like, I can invert on the silks. I can, of course, invert on the pole. My arms are definitely in the wrong position. They're way too high. My friend taught me, oh yeah, you start from behind and then you sort of run up and kick your legs into it. So it's all momentum based, lots of jumping into it. It is stressing me out to watch myself badly invert above this half mat that is not covering any surface area of the ground.
Woo!
Sorry, I keep pausing. That is another thing that is tricky if you go from one apparatus to the other. Silks and pole actually have the opposite hand placement when you are inverting. Just an interesting factoid.
But I kind of got it.
I did not.
Pretend this is a middle split. I mean, that's cool. I think it looks good.
Time to wrap up pole month. What better way than with an over-the-top, barely rehearsed performance? I am going to remove the music from this so I do not get slapped with copyright. But basically, this was the culmination of my pole month, and I had only done about 4 or 5 training sessions, and I was like, yeah, that's enough to know how to do pole dancing. I decided I was going to use every pole in the studio to do all my tricks, of which there were very few, and I had my friend just film the whole thing for me, vertically, of course. So let's see how I did. Here we go. I strut up to a pole, then whip around in a fairy spin. I'm spinning so fast. I toss my hair and drop it low. My chair spins were like very wrong. I was facing towards the pole instead of out. My fireman spins were pretty good. I saucily stroll to another pole in the small studio. Okay, this is nuts. I just bust out a ballerina. I don't understand how I got into that position. I didn't really twist myself around the pole. I couldn't do that today if you asked me to do that. And then just a cute little pole sit thing. I used to exclusively pole dance with my hair down. I cannot stand that anymore. Psyching myself up to do an inversion. Really getting a running start. Absolutely not succeeding. At least I have a little mat to dramatically lie back on. That is not a pole mat. I playfully twirl my legs around. Some cute little floor work stuff. That armpit hair was cute though. Boy, I really launched myself into my pencil spins. But it's beautiful. I could not do that these days. 11 seconds of hold time in the pencil spin. And then transitioning that into a crucifix and a sit. The energy, the energy. I strike a final triumphant pose. Well, we all lived through pole month. What will I do next in my circus year? So that was that video, but it was a cute start. So yeah, that was the first part of my pole journey 4 years ago. I didn't get back into it until fall of that year, and then spring of 2020. Obviously, couldn't go to studio classes anymore. 2021 got my home pole, and here we are. I have some advice after watching that video because that sort of made me remember certain things. First of all, safety is paramount. If you can't find someone to teach you, like for example, you're just learning at home, you better make sure you have the proper safety equipment. You better make sure you are not doing things using momentum, that you are going slowly and deliberately, and you are just being as safe as possible, because honestly, showing up to class having been drinking all day, not having proper safety equipment, and then just letting my friend teach me things, that is not stuff that flies with me anymore. The second bit of advice, get a tripod for yourself. Film yourself horizontally if you're gonna make YouTube videos. I hope you thought this was a fun little dive back into my previous YouTube career. I can tell you that this circus year project, which fizzled out in June of 2019, only got cumulatively like 80 views, I think. Thanks for joining me on this trip down memory lane, and I'll see you sometime soon. Bye! The subscribe button appears on the right. A suggested video and playlist appear on the left.